Good evening. I'm Dharmendra Gordon, and this is Vegan Synergy Meditation meeting number 17. Welcome to everybody here and those of you that will be watching this on the recording on YouTube. So I invite everybody now to just take a moment to just kind of stop the world that you've been engaged in all day. However you do that, just kind of release your engagement. Give yourself the space to let go of whatever you've been involved in today and just sort of settle into the present moment wherever you are, and just notice whatever sounds there are, if your eyes are open, whatever you're seeing. If your eyes are closed, whatever is going before your eyes if they're closed. And then just sort of feel how your body feels. If there's any tension or sensations of any kind whatsoever, temperature, um, whatever's going on in your body from your feet up through your legs, your torso, your arms, your neck, and your head. Just a kind of brief witnessing of your physical form, and then notice if there's any sense of smell or taste in all of that. Just be aware of that too. And so now that you're present in your experience in the space you're in, just sort of acknowledge whatever you've been chewing on this week, whatever your mind's been working out, trying to figure out, and especially with the world we're in now, whatever unusual, unexpected, or unavoidable or unknown elements entering into your life, which there could be a few for any of us and all of us. And just acknowledge how they came into your life and where and when. And just feel that. Just feel that for a moment, what that feels like, the unexpectedness of life right now. And as you kind of just deepen your awareness of that and accept the fact that you are experiencing that, let's just take a moment and drop into our hearts and just kind of embrace that, whatever that challenge, issue, resistance, whatever it is, just let it melt into your heart right now and just surround it with heart space. Let's call it heart space. And then just take a step deeper into yourself and just allow yourself to experience the heart space you're in, that's capable of embracing and absorbing that kind of chaotic energy you just brought down from the accumulation of mental experience over your last week. So just tune into what that is, your presence in your heart space. It's capable of absorbing that kind of energy from your mind. And as you absorb that heart space, from here, just allow yourself to remember what it's like to be in your life, again, over the past week, when you're in the space of your heart, when you're coming from your heart. When you're in that space of openness and where your awareness is in the present moment, the heart only is in the present moment, where you're totally engaged with what you're doing, you're totally connected with what you're into, with what you're carrying out in the moment. And just feel the power of that, the energy of that, the force of that. and your connectedness with it and your engagement with it and your inner strength that's rising to whatever it is that you're engaging in this moment through your heart. And as you acknowledge that, we're just going to take one more step down into your belly, into your hara, into the center of your life force, where your life force is stationed down below your belly, where the energy field is the most concentrated, where you connect with the universal life force, where all living energy fields, I'll say it that way, connect with the universal life force. And that universal life force has plenty of room for your heart, and it has also plenty of room for all hearts, in every heart. So you also have the capacity in this space of your being to sense yourself here. And if there has been in your awareness a time over the last week where you were this deep in yourself and you were in the depths of your being and you were feeling the interconnectedness with all hearts, all living beings, just acknowledge that and check that out, feel that, and sense the emanation and the quality and the character of the emanation in your hara, in your center, where your life force is. Just kind of tune into that right now. Feel the aliveness of it and the intelligence of it, the brilliance, the capacity of that to just know beyond thinking and even beyond the heart space. It's just in that sense of being connected with everything. And so while we're in that space of the interconnectedness of everything, I'm just going to share the theme for this week and this meeting. This week, we will be looking into the theme of the sixth life code of friction. Friction in the sense of the degree of resistance experienced between two independent entities in any kind of interactive relationship. This results from the difference existing in potential energy between the two energy fields in juxtaposition, which means occupying the same space at the same time. When there is a reaction on one side or the other, that leads to an impasse in which the buildup of energy on the one side cannot be beneficially exchanged with the other side. Through mutual agreement, this can easily lead to conflict. Usually when one side has an agenda, which is present, that has the intention of benefiting itself without taking into consideration the benefit, if any of the other side is receiving, there arises an energetic imbalance, usually in the form of unnecessary tensions in the physical body, negative emotional states, and false imaginations based on non-reality, all of which has the effect of maintaining the grip the egotistically based personality has on the direction of the life path, which is primarily focused on the selfish attainment of whatever goal it has set for itself. For the most part, the only way to break this vicious cycle of behavior is through the repeated experience of the failure to reach the goals one has set for themselves with this mindset of selfishness. Eventually, if one is fortunate enough, there will come a time of disillusionment in which one is thrown back to oneself and has no choice but to face and encounter the inner emptiness one has been trying to fill by the illegitimate manipulation and misappropriation of other people's energy through whatever means. After all, conflict arises as a result of the denial, avoidance, and covering up of the truth when being presented with evidence based on the factual existence of its presence. Once you have encountered this inner emptiness, you have arrived at the truth of your situation, and also what is at the root of all conflicts. What that is the ego stripped of all its tricks and staring you straight in the face. Realizing that the motivating force behind all your ambitions is this inner emptiness, you are faced with a choice. The choice is to ignore this self-revealing truth and carry on with business as usual, or the choice to drop the old way of being and seek out a new course of action. This course of action is the essence of what diplomacy is all about. as now one will have to take into account that they exist in and share this world with other beings similar to themselves, with whom they will most likely have to seek out relationships, through which they may inquire into new and unusual modalities of being, involving thinking, speaking, and acting in unaccustomed ways. This diplomatic skill can be developed through exposing oneself to all kinds of cultures, especially through shared religious and civil ceremonies in which one is a willing participant as well as an observer. One begins to see and understand that customs and rituals adopted by various groupings of peoples for collective coexistence has at its base one primary aim, and that is the establishment of a peaceful society that allows all beings to contribute their talents, skills, and abilities to the betterment of all, and that each and every being is recompensed for their contributions. It is only on the basis of a peaceful coexistence between all its inhabitants that any kind of enlightened society could possibly be conceived and eventually realized. This peacefulness would have to be extended into and enacted with all forms of creaturehood. The practice of ahimsa, that is, nonviolence, would have to be the guiding principle at the root of all relationships as such. This would encourage and support all species to thrive and naturally gravitate to their highest potential. What was at the shadow level a source of conflict is now the energy potential that empowers the optimizing thrust of being as it is imparted to all living beings in the unveiling of the harmony of nature through its myriad creative forms of expression, all existing in harmonious and peaceful interrelationship. So we can now open our eyes and begin the meeting. That's the theme for the week, and I invite anybody who wishes to use that particular lens, if they wish, to contextualize their experience of the collective and how they relate to it this week. I also welcome anybody who just wants to go off their own authentic experience and whatever shadow they've experienced this week. That's also fine. You can either follow that format, and that's for people who would like to work with these life codes and become familiar with how our genetic codons actually function in actual experience in our life, and use the collective as a sounding board and a mirror to kind of learn from that in sharing. Or you can also just be spontaneous and share whatever you've been going through in your week, or you can blend the two. It really doesn't matter. And as always, I'll start the sharing process of my own shadow in relation to all this. And I'll just say it's been an interesting week this last week through all different meetings and different stuff. Definitely the energy of conflict coming up in my life. But in a way, conflict in the sense of friction, in the sense of two new and different, very differently, coming from different places, kind of, I guess you could call it, people with different ideas and coming together and at first just kind of going boom. But out of that boom, there's actually an energy to kind of stay connected anyway, even in that friction, and find whatever the harmony is inside of it. And that's just kind of a quick recap of what I've been through the week is different friction meetings like that, but finding a deeper harmony. But that's kind of more getting into the gift. The actual friction is in my moment-to-moment everyday life. I do every day about an hour of internal martial arts exercise to start my day. And so I'm always really pumped with a lot of extra life force as I start my day. And because I'm a very disciplined kind of person who I just have a very streamlined way of doing my day, my life, and pretty much everything about me is very streamlined. So when I'm moving through the day and I find places where things aren't streamlining the way that I would, I guess the way you could say my subconscious would like to do it, there's always this friction. And it's always interesting to watch that friction it can turn into anything from anger to really enjoyable laughter, depending on what space I'm in when that hits me. So there's kind of an example of how you can take it from both the theme and your life and see that you know, because I mean, these genetic life codes they're what make up who we are, and they basically filter everything we do from our highest consciousness down to our most basic consciousness. So it's really not that hard once you get the hang of it, and you have a sense of what the theme is, from conflict to diplomacy to peace. Um, then you can kind of you can easily kind of see how your life is unfolding. But the world right now too is kind of going through an incredible amount of friction. If you think about it, everything's stopping. And that in itself is kind of a collective social friction that we're all having to face right now with the shutdown. I mean, shut down. I mean, that in itself is like the ultimate friction. It's like, wham. And then all of a sudden, where does all that energy go that we've all been? And so, just to kind of open the space up to also how we can start to share our shadows in relation to this friction, which at the shadow level, which we're working at right now, has to do with conflict and how we deal with conflict. So I think that's enough for me right now. So anybody else who would like to open up and share their shadow?
I'll go if it's my time. Thank you for that. Yeah, good to hear. It's definitely been an interesting week for me as well, on many levels, in many ways. Friction in terms of some small conflicts, but definitely come through into diplomacy and peace and moving forward in the most sort of flowful, peaceful way. But I've seen that friction amongst some of my other friends, and seeing the way that, I guess, through this collective evolution, speeding up, everybody seems to be coming to a place of diplomacy and peace quite quickly in their relationships. And yeah, it's really heartening to see and to experience myself as well. There's been friction in my organization, not in like a negative kind of way, not in like a low vibe kind of way, but kind of a changing of direction, which I see as kind of like more of an expansion and opening up as opposed to conflict. It's almost like, I was imagining it like a train on train tracks jumping from the one to having the other one open up and going on that other direction, but it's not quite like that because it's just more of a growth. It's more of an opening. And I guess, not sure if, yeah, I feel like there is a little bit of friction there because internally for me, it's just something that I definitely have had to get used to, this idea of doing things slightly differently and being a bit more accessible and available for more people as opposed to just those people that we have been so heavily focused on for the last year or so. But it's really good. It's really nice. But it's something that I've had to deal with internally myself and had to, I guess, come through maybe a letting go process in a few different ways, a few different levels through my life in the last few days. And just acceptance, just coming to a place of acceptance, letting go, and just focusing now on raising my vibration. That's really yesterday and today. Yesterday, as I said earlier, was just very cleansing. The rain came down. It was really beautiful. Today, the sun's been out a bit more and I feel much more energized. It's been a week of contemplation and going inward and watching and waiting and just not, again, letting go of the urge to post, share a bunch of stuff like on social media. I'm just kind of have had to really withdraw from that and be a bit more observant. And I'm still in that place at the moment, but I'm getting ready through the fact that I've been able to observe so much and really just see envision the future of what I'm doing with Paradise Rising, with my organization, with my own life, which is that basically. So it's been an interesting week having that the vision integrating with that friction internally for me, and I'm in a really good place right now. So yeah, that's all I have for the moment.
Thank you, Lucy. That was nice. Just want to share something that arose as you were sharing. I was also thinking of the sense of how friction also arises when something of less energy is hitting something that's got more energy. And so right now, this virus is actually, it's kind of like that in reverse, because it's got less energy, because it wants to slow everybody down and stop them and make them go on reduced functioning, and our normal speed is up here. So this thing's coming in, and we're going this speed, but the corona thing is saying stop. So all of a sudden we're having to take that energy and maybe hopefully go in a different direction rather than the one we usually go in, which is just rushing around here, there, and everywhere. Now the coronavirus is making us, okay, we can't go that way anymore. We've hit a wall. So, and we can't go that way, and we can't go that way, because now all of a sudden, we're on lockdown. So who knows? Maybe we can start going, a direction most people never go, which is, the upward direction, like we do in these meetings. Anyway, I'm gonna, whoever would like to also open up and share their shadow.
I'll share, Darb. This is Danya. So I wanted to share, there was a lot of things going on this week, and for me personally, with conflict. And I really like how you just shared about the having to stop, because I was on the go with my daughter's almost 15, and taking her and doing and feeling like the Uber mom. And COVID came in, and it was sad and about what's going on. And then all of a sudden an issue happened, and now it's at my back door. And I hadn't meditated in a long time. I hadn't felt my spirituality and connected with it for a really long time. So through being able to slow down, through the conflict of making me slow down, through the issue of what's hitting so close to home, some beautiful things came from that. And I had an amazing healing session last night, and was so incredibly inspired to be able to share my light again, my healing, my Reiki. And not only that, so honored that my daughter joined the healing circle. And afterwards, my daughter was so inspired, and I was so inspired, we did a Kundalini meditation and continued with the positive energy, putting it out there, sharing, not just for us, but for the whole collective, because it just needed to happen. And I feel so much better about it. There was a lot of shift, a lot of energy, a lot of dropping stones, we used to say, or now shadows, a lot let go, not only for me, but for my daughter, and being able to pass on the beautiful um, the beautiful energy, the beautiful feeling really helped me focus with work today, helped me focus around the house. The energy was so lifted. It was such a incredible change. And to really be reminded that out of, you have to hit darkness. You have to hit a bottom before you can come out the other side, before that there's a light. And you need to stop sometimes and really reevaluate what's important, and to understand how connected everybody is. And I'm grateful and I'm thankful for all of that. So I really wanted to share that tonight.
Wow, really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Glad you, you know, are coming back home again, I hope.
Yeah.
I'll just say a quick thing about Danya. She was somebody that I worked with many years ago, early on in this kind of work, and she's basically hasn't, except for a very little bit, pretty much the age of her daughter is 15, right? She's
Yes.
15. Yeah, it's pretty much been that many years since we've really done anything like this together. But she used to do a lot of this kind of stuff with me years ago, but in person. So it's good. It's good you're here. I hope you show up for more of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it sounds like you have some cool stuff to share.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks. I'm going to mute you now if you're done, unless Adriana wants to share. Otherwise, anybody else who wants to share their shadow space.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. With all of the stuff going on right now, I've always been the type of person that's very change oriented, and very people oriented, and I love doing new things, and I love doing things with people. And so you can imagine what it was like knowing that I wouldn't be able to do either of those things for so long. And so there's been a lot of friction with that. And it's just all of these emotions that I feel like I want to let out to other people. And I can't because there's nobody around. And so there's been a lot of internal friction with that for me. And that's why I appreciate this so much, because there are people. So yeah, I've been really craving that. And so that's why it was especially nice to do the Kundalini last night, because I was able to let out the amount of energy, and I was able to have that change again that I would with meeting new people and experiencing new things, as if all of this wasn't happening. But I was able to find it within myself, and that was really, really fulfilling. And I was also able to discover that there was a lot more underlying friction internally that I hadn't realized before. And it's ongoing. Like the friction, it feels like it will never end. But I think sometimes it's good. I think sometimes that challenge is good. But yeah, it's just been a lot of discovery, a lot of new things that are happening. And it's the change that I've been craving, but it's just so unexpected. It's such a different type of change, and it's just a lot to process.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. That's probably probably we could all relate to that on some level, I'm sure. So thank you, Adriana. I'm just going to let that speak for itself. Who else? Is there anybody else that would like to unravel some shadow space?
I would. I wasn't sure if I wanted to or not, but of course my dog's gonna speak now. Yeah, Adriana, Danya, I feel you. We all did a Reiki session last night together with Dharmendra that I facilitated. And I'm going to try not to go into too many details, but yeah, it's been hard for me too because I feel like I have no one to talk to. I have Darby there, but he's, something happened on Monday. My daughter's boyfriend had a grand mal seizure and fell to the floor, and he's been unconscious ever since. He's got the coronavirus. He's in ICU. It's been extremely difficult because I can't even be around my daughter or my granddaughter. And she is hurting so bad. And I just want to put my arms around them, and they're on self-quarantine. She started to get a little sick. Fortunately, she seems to be feeling a little better today. But it's crazy. So I'm just, boy, I know I said this in last week's meeting, that I'm really, finding myself being the witness a lot. And this week in particular, I don't know, it's kind of like it's hit me, but it really hasn't fully yet. Maybe I just need to be centered through this, hope for the best, expect the worst. So it's a very, it is challenging. It's frustrating not to feel that I can't do more, that I'm just kind of like sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting and trying to remain okay with that and centered and just, if anything, it just makes me more creative. I cook more food and bring it to them, and I, rally together people to do a Reiki session, things like that. So it's definitely, the ideas and the creativity is definitely flowing a lot more and making connections with people that I haven't in a while. And I'm very grateful right now. My brother's back in my life. For about 2 years, we didn't speak to each other because I told him to fuck off. And for good reason. But anyway, he's back in my life, and we're closer than we've ever been. And it actually happened before the coronavirus. So I'm really grateful for that it didn't take something radical like this to bring us together. But so, I mean, it's odd in all of this that there's really a lot of blessings in spite of what's happening. I know last week I shared a lot of my anger is just at humanity for, for still remaining to be selfish in so many ways, whether it's eating meat or whatever, because I'm pissed because the whole reason this virus is happening is because of what people do with animals. And it's, it's a sore spot. I feel it's very difficult, to reach people and get them to see that they're hurting themselves or hurting others or hurting sentient beings or hurting our planet. And I watch this happen, and, it's like, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? So it's really just an interesting thing definitely an interesting time to be in, definitely a lot of interesting stuff to watch. I want to be as positive as I can. I think through this all I've become more positive. Not giving so much into my anger. I've changed my activism a bit on that note. So that's good. Because it's really truly in my heart, to get the message out for the greater good of all, not just animals, the human animals as well. So anyways, I think that's pretty much it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, beloved. Just take a breath on that one. Evan, do you feel like jumping into shadow space?
I'm kind of struggling to kind of isolate my shadow and tying it in with friction. Yeah, because there's definitely some shadow that's gone on the last week, but it's kind of been a little bit ambiguous for me. Kind of just like a feeling like I should be doing something and I don't know what I should be doing. Taking in little bits of news here and there. There's like some signs that I should be thinking about the future a little bit more, or that the future is going to be different than I was anticipating. And yeah, but yeah, I suppose I feel a little bit more stagnant than maybe that's, I guess, how much friction there really is I'm just I'm just holding still.
Yep, that's definitely can be a state of inertia. The friction is so much that you're just, but be prepared because that's a really powerful one when it starts to, it becomes, once that opens up, it goes from determination to invincibility. So you got to watch that inertia. And we're going to get there in 3 weeks anyway, because it's the 9th life code. So it's just 3 past the one we're on right now. In any case, I'll just remind everybody that you can just also share whatever you're going through. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, it's nice if you can do it, because then it makes it a little more creative, and you use your intelligence a little more to play with the theme, your life, the collective, and everything that's going on. And it just gives you more to play with too. That's all I'm saying. Thank you, Evan. Is there anybody else who wants to share at this time? Otherwise, we're going to shift to the next phase of the meeting, into the gift, the talent, our talents, our genius. I'll give it a moment. If nothing, then we'll shift.
I might say one more thing, just about my shadow. I don't know if it exactly relates to friction. I guess it's more of a universal shadow aspect that I'm kind of experiencing or sensing, kind of maybe delving into, and consciously not, in a way, consciously not inviting darkness into my life and into my soul, and very consciously becoming aware of my vibration, and or remembering to be aware of my vibration, because I've gone through a lot of cycles of that, of consciously being like, okay, I'm going to raise my vibration, and making every effort to be able to do that. And Evan, what you mentioned about feeling that inertia, it's the I was looking at this chart this morning of the frequencies and how it goes from shame, guilt, fear, inertia, I think, is maybe after that. It kind of moves its way up, and then at the top you've got enlightenment, peace, and we never get to enlightenment, but moving in that direction, and raising our vibration consciously through what we're eating, meditation, cleanse, and that's, I guess, that point of seeing that again this morning, and making that decision myself to, firstly, a few days ago, through meditation, essentially saying, I do not invite any darkness into my soul. I only want to be light, embody light, and express light. And that's really helped me shift into a higher frequency, I feel. And I guess there was an aspect or an element of fear of a greater darkness that has really come into my awareness in the last week. And whether that's sort of a timeless thing, or whether that's specific to now, or whatever it is, that darkness is shown itself. And I've been able to see it, and just say I don't want any of that lower vibration to enter my being, and really to be able to put up those boundaries. And I guess moving through some of the fear of it and actually realizing and acknowledging that maybe some of it was my perception of the darkness, and actually there are elements of light that's kind of in there as well. Yeah, sorry, that's quite ambiguous. Maybe that's the word. Yeah, just wanted to share some experience.
Well, there's some interesting stuff in what you're saying. There's when it comes to consciousness, it's quite a spectrum, because there is a like a cosmic unconsciousness there, and there's where the deepest shadows are. There's also a collective unconsciousness and an individual unconsciousness, and then there's the state that we're all used to, that tiny little ephemeral island of consciousness that we spend our days in. And most people are daydreaming during that time anyway. Most people are very, very not present. If you've ever watched it, the more you're present, the more you'll notice that. And that's what's so-called consciousness. But then there's also superconsciousness, collective superconsciousness, which is the domain of this meeting. And then there's cosmic superconsciousness also. So it's just an interesting point that you were mentioning. And a technique that has been used for a really long time when it comes to darkness, and you have to obviously know how much darkness you're able to handle. However much darkness you've transformed in yourself, in your shadows, is how far you'll be able to go with this process. But it's basically you breathe in the suffering of others. Once you've cleaned it up with yourself, and you can do it with yourself, you can absorb your own, like we do in these meetings where we will do I'm kind of segueing into the gift thing this will be by way of explaining how we'll move into the gift this time in this meeting. But basically you learn to absorb the suffering of others and then breathe out bliss or compassion or whatever siddha you want. So it's a really cool exercise, and it seems counterintuitive because you think, I don't want the darkness, I don't want anything, and that's natural, that's normal. But as you go deeper in and you realize that, how else is the world going to transform itself? And you really, to be honest, just you really can't absorb anybody else's suffering, but you can become so sensitive, you can feel exactly what their suffering is. And you, as we do in these meetings, you can synchronize with that being's aura and literally be in the same frequency they're in, and then heal it through yourself, if you know what I mean, so that you get better and better and better at transforming every type of let's call it unconsciousness, because that's really what it is. All darkness is the absence of light. And in terms of consciousness, that means being unconscious or subconscious. So I'll just offer that as a kind of a nice, that's really what we do. Like right now, I'm going to take this friction that that I've been experiencing in this last week, and in encountering people who have probably as hard of a head as I do. But at the same time, it's not. The beauty of it is when you make that contact, you realize, oh, and it kind of just dissolves, and the friction turns into this. The conflict shifts into this diplomacy where you go, okay, there's something new here that's stretching me. So how do I? Because when the mind's interpreting it, it's always going to be from a fear space, and then it's always going to be a problem. There's always going to be something there. We're always going to project our darkness out on something else, rather than step into ourselves and say, what is the darkness I'm being shown now in this by this person who's giving me a gift by being who they are to show me my own darkness? And the minute I see that, I go, wait a minute, I can learn something here. It's not anything I need to do outside. It's an inner shift that makes me go, wait a minute, okay, I'm going to just open here and see what happens. And it's really magical, because when that happened earlier in the week, all of a sudden, something was created right in that moment, a whole new Facebook page where we could all go to start to register all our different meetings. So we have a place to keep track of all our different, the stuff I do, this, plus these block parties, plus the Solutions Club, plus this guy who started it and what he's into. He was here earlier. He left. He had to go early though. And so it's amazing that when the friction becomes diplomacy, and what that means is you're willing to drop your I'm right attitude, or your, I know it all, or whatever attitude that's keeping you from actually going, oh, there's something I need to learn here. I need to step out of my comfort zone. I need to maybe acquire a new behavior, a new way of thinking, or a new way of using my voice in a way to express something that's going to allow me to grow, that's going to allow me to evolve. So really, in the end, when we think about evolution, accelerated collective evolution, the very thought of evolution itself happens through friction. It actually happens through a part of yourself that needs to grow, coming in contact with a source of that growth that's coming at you, that can allow that growth to happen if you can embrace it, if you can take it in and step out of your comfort zone, and allow yourself to learn again, and allow yourself to be guided in some way. So yeah, so and then it's like you breathe easier, your heart opens back up, and you feel a new sense of connection in a way that you didn't know existed before. That's kind of what the diplomacy opens to you. To be a true, not a dark politician, but a politician of the light, somebody who truly is diplomatic. My God, I mean, because politics covers every aspect of our lives. So when I think of diplomacy, I think of politics. But I also see that to be a true politician, you have to be able to mirror anybody from anywhere on the planet, really, to be a real enlightened leader, somebody coming from a true sense of what is diplomatic. You have to be able to present yourself to anybody and everybody and be able to mirror their experience cleanly. So, I mean, that just takes a tremendous amount of willingness to constantly transcend your own self-definition, if you want to call it that. I mean, and to talk about the friction we deal with when it comes to the images we hold so dearly about ourselves, and how we define that, and how it makes everything seem to appear in a way that we think it's supposed to appear, when reality is much more wild and radical and full of surprises than that. So diplomacy to me seems like a rather logical, and by logical I mean it's the best way to ensure your continued existence, not logical in some scientific mental sense, but in logical it makes sense. It'll help us keep moving on and proliferating and thriving. And it just makes sense to kind of approach reality in that way, that I just constantly extending, transcending my self-definition, due to my heart having to embrace another person's presence and where they're coming from. And not so much that I have to be, well, it depends. If they have a higher frequency, I might be open to being guided by that, because I'll learn something from it. And you can tell when it's a higher frequency, because you feel like you're being innervated with a higher energy that you're not used to, which is very different than a chaotic energy of somebody who's got a lesser frequency, who's trying to come in and mess, and manipulate you in subtle ways. So it's good in the diplomacy. You also learn a kind of discernment, an ability to tell, where different people's agendas at in relation to you, and how to, diplomacy has to have a very high skill set of discernment in relation to things, to make that a response that's useful, that feeds not only yourself but the other person. Even if they're coming from a conflictual space, there's ways to do that open the space. So that's kind of a way for me, that I embrace this shadow, this conflictual shadow, and open it up into a more, what is diplomacy, and how do I, open my heart to everybody in the world in a way that acknowledges their stance, their state, their position, where they're coming from. All right, it's a beautiful silence, but we're not to the Siddha space yet. So does anybody have, would anybody like to share the gift that they got out of that shadow that they experienced?
I think as contradictory as it sounds, I think my gift from all this friction is discovering more friction. But I think I discovered a deeper friction, not just the surface friction and stress of the interruption of daily life. I discovered an inner friction that I need to embrace my emotions more. And I think just learning that was a gift in itself, because I knew, underlyingly, subconsciously, I knew that I wasn't doing it, but I wouldn't admit it. And so having to stop and having to think helped me admit it. And now I think I'm able to start doing it more. Um,
That's an interesting trajectory to go to a deeper friction, because this life code is about friction. So even the expression of peace is kind of like at the highest level of friction, discovering harmony through that friction. That's how peace results. So it's an interesting, I guess you could say, truth underlying the whole theme of friction, because all friction is it's creating energy from one energy level to another, so that a transference of whatever between the two energy levels can occur. So that was insightful. Thank you, Adriana.
Something I like to think about is that, like in times of friction, like right now, I'm visualizing it as being like erosion. So as there's friction occurring, some things are crumbling away, and then it's like through that process you're able to kind of to find those parts of yourself that won't crumble away and that will just reshape themselves. Because I feel like in times when I'm kind of in conflict or rubbing elbows with someone or something in life, there's sometimes what's frustrating and painful is that I'm feeling some part of me trying to leave. It's trying to be kind of scraped away or be altered, and it's my kind of my opposition to that to that change that's so uncomfortable, and then afterwards I'm lighter because of it. That is all.
I'll go again. Yeah, lots of things that you're saying, Evan, is really resonating with me, and I feel like that uncomfortableness. I don't know if everybody is going through it. I can imagine a lot of people out there are feeling that, as you said, Dharmendra, the friction kind of okay, well, we can't go anywhere. We got to go up. But at that point, you got to just stop as well. And that's really affecting my body. And I feel a frustration and uncomfortableness because I'm so used to just being active, like Adriana, as well as what you were saying about wanting to be out, change, movement, seeing people. I feel I've lost a huge, yeah, I feel like it's been frustrating because I've had that aspect of my physical exercise kind of taken away because I can't run because my knees aren't great. I can't do the kind of exercise that I would really like to be able to do. And I feel because it's this restriction and this physical kind of encaging, if that's a word, we're just not able to go out and do anything. It's very frustrating. It's very uncomfortable in my body, but I am accepting that and the fact that I can't. Yeah, I had plans to go and stay with a friend in the bush and go camping for a few days, but now because there's the police are fining people for driving anywhere if it's not like a legitimate reason. So yeah, I'm not taking public transport. I'm not going to see anybody. I'm not able to go camping. I can't go out and even into the bush where there aren't any other people really. And this friend that I was going to go stay with is very conscious of hygiene and everything. So, it would have probably been fine, but because we don't want to be fined like astronomical huge amounts of money for just driving somewhere, that's very frustrating. But in a way, it is a gift, and I do see this across the board for the whole planet, as well as for myself, is that it is making us go inward, it is making us go upward, and really having to reevaluate how we've been collectively operating as a planet and individually. As I said, yeah, this week has really been about observation and really being aware. And I guess because I'm quite new to the whole idea of integrating the shadow, it's not really something that I've thought about so much in the past. It's quite a it's on and off kind of entered my life over the last year or so, but I'm much more conscious of it now. And I think that was something that I've maybe reverted back to an old attitude or old patterning of non-acceptance of that. But it is an acceptance of where we're at right now and just acknowledging it. And it's okay. We are witnessing, we're observing, we're having to stop and just exist, just be, and not get frustrated with too much of the stillness. And I have been through a lot of times of meditating a lot, and I'm really grateful for that at this time, that I'm able to, at the same time as feeling frustrated, not being able to move forward with Paradise Rising within myself. I've just kind of got to like a hiatus, I guess, and just had to stop and watch and wait and see how things go and be ready for whenever that change, and whenever I personally am ready and able to move forward and do much more. And because of that, now yesterday I was able to do a lot more on the website, and it's bringing so much more fluidity and light and kind of that middle ground, meeting in the middle, as opposed to a couple of weeks ago I was talking about how in the past, over the last 6 months or so, I've really sort of, or the last year especially, kind of 6 to 8 months, really swung from one side to very far on the other side, and now I'm coming back into the middle, and I'm feeling this being more, or Paradise Rising as being more this meeting place for different types of people to come and be together, and not the non-judgment, I guess, is one aspect that I'm doing my best to bring into what we're doing. So yeah, I'm grateful that I'm able to actually be in that stillness and allow it to just shift into a higher vibration as and when it's needed to, and going through all the stuff that I'm going through, that we're all going through, and yeah, integrating it, which is, yeah, I'm grateful for these meetings to learn how to do that more easily. Yeah, there we go.
Hi, Nancy, welcome. We're mid-gift. Everybody's sharing gifts. So thank you, Lucy, for sharing all that. I like the detail you put into your sharings. That's cool. I like detail. It makes you feel like you're right there with you, experiencing it. That I like that. Okay, let's see. Does anybody else feel like sharing their gift? And I'll say, just for the sake of the newly arrived, that we've already been through the life code. For the theme for this week is friction, and we've already been through the conflictual shadow level. Everybody's already shared their conflictual shadow level, and right now we're almost through the diplomatic gift heart space level of what friction is about. Friction is a good thing. It creates energy, and it's just all in how you use it. And so I'll just say that. So if anybody else would like to share how friction allows the natural talent, the gift of diplomacy, of adapting to new forms of behaviors and ways of thinking and customs and mannerisms, by having to deal with people from all kinds of different cultures, the essence of diplomacy. If anybody has anything that they would like to share about that, or just any gift, that anything that's causing your creative expression to, but it's always nice if you can play it off the theme and then jump it into the world and the life we're in right now. And it helps you use more intelligence rather than just sharing your own thing. We also have a theme, and we can use it to reflect off the collective what we're experiencing and basically just in the last week we're kind of covering that period. So we kind of catch up with our life every week, and then we're ready for the next. We're ready, fresh and new for what comes in the next week. Anyway, just throwing that in for all those who are watching also. So if anybody else has anything they'd like to share in relation to the genius expression of friction of diplomacy.
I'll just, excuse me, I'll just say that I pretty much already did. I kind of jumped into the gift in what I was saying earlier, but in a very odd way, in spite of all the friction going on this week in particular, it has, I really feel in my heart that this is existence way of making us all stop and think. Like I had shared last week that I had read somewhere that, Mother Nature is, it's like Mother Nature has sent us all to our room to think about what we've done. And, I really do agree with that. I am there, in spite of what I'm experiencing emotionally because of my daughter and what's going on with her boyfriend and all, there's still, oddly enough, there's still a sense of calm in it all. And I think it's because the busyness of the world has pretty much come to a halt. I don't know how many people are paying attention to the skies being clearer and animals returning, in certain areas, and it just goes to show you how beautiful nature is when it's just not disrupted. So there is that sense of being able to enjoy those again, sitting outside in the evenings, talking, with my beloved, and just really enjoying the stillness and the quiet. So for me, that's the gift I'm feeling in all of it, because in spite of, you know, the sadness that I feel on a day-to-day basis with my daughter, there's still that sense of just a peace that resides in all of this in an odd sort of way. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And to me, that's the gift that I'm receiving. It's keeping me from freaking out, really, is what it's keeping me. It's keeping my frustration level down, my worry. It's there, but for some reason in all this, it doesn't seem to be as intense as it is when the world is buzzing, you know? But, and it just, the gift for me is it just puts me in a place of, just as I said before, just being more creative with my time. Basically not being so on heightened awareness with so much, and not taking anything for granted. As scary as it is financially, Darmender and I actually have 2 weeks off together, and we haven't had that in over 11 years. So that there's another, you know, bonus that we get to hang out. And I told him too, just funny, I told him, I said, okay, now you get to see what I do with my time. and I said, and guess what? Now that you're home, you're going to be helping me. So it's, so he's getting it's kind of fun in that way, and he has been awesome, by the way. Helping me make some beautiful food to take to my daughter and my granddaughter. So, you know, in spite of it, yeah, in spite of all the frustration, there is gifts, you know, and that's mine. Well, there's a few, but anyways, that's all I got.
Thanks, Amira. Yes, it is lovely to have these 2 weeks together. It's been too long. And as Amira was saying, she kind of covered the whole spectrum. She even went up into the peacefulness there, which I'll just a little bit on that. If anybody else wants to still share a gift, they can. But just for a moment, I just want to, oh, go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, I guess the gift was I just started to reframe the idea of friction in my mind, and seeing it as just different levels of contact, and like just different amounts of like applied pressure. And right now in my house, there's 5 of us here, and so we're all pretty close. And I've noticed in the last week, just kind of playing around with like how much interaction is too much, to the point of where someone gets a little bothered, or how much is not enough to where someone gets bothered that I'm not interacting with them enough. Yeah, and I feel like with things kind of quieting down externally, it's been nice to actually have the stillness to be able to kind of notice like the subtleties and like the different levels of friction, to where things are kind of operating smoothly. And I feel like we can take that out in the world, and with interacting with people, just figuring out by essentially just like applying different levels of pressure and stuff, and back and forth with people, we can find that those sweet spots where things happen smoothly, and just like any other art, any other creative endeavor.
Well, thank you, Evan. That brought in a lot of strands of other gifts too. I like the way you wove that. Some different things about playing with time spaces opening up, and how much time you have, and kind of connected last week's theme too of we were working with the time space last week with what we're doing there. So nice. Thanks. I'm raring to go into the sitter, but I want to give anybody else the space to, and Nancy, if you do feel like jumping in, you can also do the shadow, you can do the conflictual shadow expression of friction, and then jump into the diplomacy expression of it if you want. I mean, I'm not saying you have to. If you feel like sharing, you can do both, since you didn't get to do your shadow yet, if you want. And let's see also, Danya, if you have something you want to share the gift too, because there's still a couple people left that haven't shared. And you don't have to. I mean, I'll give it a couple minutes, and if nothing, we'll just go on to the Siddha. Either way is fine. Okay, well, I'm going to open up some space for the Siddha. And what that means is opening space to the higher, and by higher I mean those forms of intelligence that generally throughout their daily experience function at a much more increased capacity of using their intelligence due to the presence of a much higher frequency and more intense and powerful and also more evolved frequency of consciousness. And so when I say that, that's what I say when I open space to the higher and ask for help from above in not only that kind of energy descending into this space like grace, but also us rising up to that and receiving that energy. And we do that by dropping into our belly, into our being. And I'm just gonna, and everybody hold there, don't move, because I want to read what iPhone just shared. That's kind of a pretty cool thing right there. That's very much in terms of the theme we're doing. She said, the wall between my daughter and myself remains, but I'm learning to live without despair. Wow. Talk about that's kind of a combination of not only acknowledging an existing conflict, but also finding a way to be diplomatic in what seems at this point like irreconcilable space. So thank you for sharing, Somaya. I believe that, I'm assuming that's how you say your name based on how you're spelling it. But thank you for adding something to our discussion. All right, and then shifting back into that that frequency of higher consciousness. And so what I do is I ask for, I'm just going to introduce some terms here that wouldn't hurt everybody to become familiar with. The first term is a time cell convergence. So I take the way I experience time in terms of, if you think of it, how long it takes me to take a breath, or how long it takes my heartbeat to beat, or how long is our day, how long is our month, how long is our year, how long is a minute. When I say a time cell convergence, I'm asking for my time cell of that experience of time to be merged with a higher form of consciousness's experience of time, in which maybe a breath for them is a week. So that you could imagine a consciousness, what would a consciousness that takes a whole week to take in an in-breath and an out-breath, what kind of an experience do they have? What are they responsible for? What are they dealing with? So that's what I'm asking for when we're talking about our higher self and merging and working with a siddha, a supernatural ability. So when I'm saying I open space to the higher and ask for help from above, and I open present moment in order to receive that, that's actually what I'm asking for. And so that's what I'm doing right now. And specifically in this case, I'm asking for peace. And there also is a specific archangel of peace that I have many times actually connected my higher self aspect, siddha of peace, and learned many things from. And that archangel is called Uriel. It's one of the four main archangels, along with Michael, Gabriel, and well, it's different in different traditions. Haniel is usually the fourth one, but anyway, they're just beautiful names. Anyway, they have an unbelievable amount of experiential beauty when you do a time cell convergence with them. So right now we're working with peace, and as I open up the space, as my higher self opens to that, and I align myself with that multi-dimensional expression of peace coming down into my being right now, I realize that as I really learn to be diplomatic and learn to accommodate by mirroring without any kind of agenda on my side, everybody I meet and in every kind of culture or lifestyle or ethnicity or part of the planet, eventually I come to this place where I find myself forgetting about the fact that there's any kind of difference with myself and any other, and I extend that into the animal kingdom too, where and even into the plant kingdom, in every kingdom, where I find myself in the being able to be with any form of consciousness and just be a clear and empty mirror that's able to allow whatever's there to be reflected in me, so that not only can I experience what that consciousness is without any filters, without my interpretation, but in my way of being, that form of consciousness can also get a reflection of me. And so there's an actual exchange of energies. And so when that starts to happen without any qualification anymore, and no matter where I connect with, or who or at what level I connect with any form of consciousness, then I think that's really the beginning of the essence of what true peace is, because there can be a lot of friction at times. I can connect with forms or styles of expression of consciousness that might really challenge my way of my model of the world, really come up against my edge of my model of the world, and really push it into the boundaries of it to extend and include more things that I maybe didn't think of before in that way. And but when I see that every single one of those experiences that I have just becomes an exciting learning experience, and the more energy, the more friction, what I know is that as I open to that, and I remember to be that mirror and not take the energy, the intensity of the energy personally, but just let it go through me, the more I can do that, the more I realize that that friction is just an excuse to create this incredible harmony. And out of that incredible harmony, there's the only thing that can happen is you naturally, spontaneously arrive at the way of peace. You're literally, just everything you do becomes an expression of peace, because everything you do is an excuse to be a silent, empty witness. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. You could be engaging at a very high energy level, but inwardly you're in that space of just settled and just serene, and just like you're with family, and all of a sudden it's like the whole existence becomes your family. That to me is really when you have got what peace is about. The whole existence becomes your family. And it even means that at this level of consciousness, of this depth of understanding and experience and manifestation of peace, that even those who've kind of gotten off into the dark ways, you just see them as erring children, and that sooner or later, so you hold a space there of compassion for even those beings. And it's only because I'm aligning with the Siddha of peace right now, because that's something what I just expressed is even kind of new for me, in the sense of actually living it, to be able to understand what it means to hold a compassionate space, to where peacefulness is the correct response in the face of anything. So that's kind of what the Siddha of peace is opening for me right now. And I wholeheartedly invite anybody else to jump into, and even try it on, and however you do it, to open space and ask for help from above, and receive, and let your time cells merge with a higher frequency. And just do it if you do it with your intent, and I know we all have done it, but as you actually step into it when you share, just kind of redo that again just for a moment, so that you really can get that sense of grace. Because whenever you tune into a Siddha, it always gives you that sense of lift. That's how you know you're attuned to it. And then you just trust, and you just go with what is being revealed to you. So I am going to leave the space open for whoever would like to share that. and here's kind of a way to, here's kind of a way to, I don't know how to say it, like, but anyway, to jump into that. If this was your last breath, this was your last moment, and in the next moment you were you were no longer in a body and you were released and you were free. And for some reason in your life, because when we do leave our body, that's the moment where we encounter a siddha space. So let's just say the siddha space happens to be peace. So now you can have fun with it. So what would the experience of peace be like if this was your last moment, and then the next moment you stepped into the realm of peace? You can even go creative imagination and just say what you would like that peace to be. It doesn't matter, because it's not that. When we get to the siddha space, it's not so serious. It's just more about using your verve, your creative verve. If I might create a new combination of words there.
I think it's hard for me to speak to peace because most often when I have an experience of peace and just like deep calm, it's usually silent. But I do know there's been times where when singing or speaking or out in a very loud venue, even in those times I can experience peace too. And I feel like right now, peace kind of just feels like, yeah, I don't know. This idea of diplomacy came up when I was having thoughts that were coming into my head, and I feel like rather than adding to the friction of the present moment in those thoughts, I kind of just parlayed them, or I don't know, just moved them out of my head because I just wasn't interested in them in the moment. And I feel like I'm not sure, the peacefulness just feels like there's nothing wrong, like something could be introduced or taken away, and that's okay. I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the aspects of peace, is that it's I guess depending on how you want to look at it, it's so full or it's so empty that you can't really take anything away to make it feel more empty or add anything more that's going to make it feel more full. So yeah, that is an aspect of peace. That's a good insight. Thank you, Evan.
For me, every time you open space, Darb, it's a mindgasm, 100%. Totally bliss the fuck out. I feel so good. I feel like I'm beyond stoned. This is where I want to be. This is what I want to tap into. I love living in the rafters. I know at some point I'm going to have to get grounded again. But for me personally, I have not been up like this in a long time. It feels good. It feels 100% supported. No matter what I do, where I go, it's just essence. It's pure essence. And it's just, I'm just blissed the fuck out, and I'm grateful. So thank you.
Cool. So there's a little bit of the that was cool. I like that. Thank you. That's all I'll say to that. Yeah, that is kind of a good description of what if I can use the word should, which is really silly when you're in a siddha space, but that's how it feels when you're in a siddha space. That's, if you're connecting correctly with the siddha space, it's going to feel really, yeah. That word, if we just take the front part off and just say gasm, and you can put it in front of anything, a heartgasm or a space gasm or anything that makes you feel like you're having this explosion of really positive creative energy. That's what a gasm is. You know, so it's a good word. You know, it's a neat word, and it's a useful word, and it's what siddha space is about. Because when you leave your body, when you are gonna, you know, the word die, and this is your last moment, and you step into, it's gonna be a gasm. It's going to be a life-gasm. It's going to be the culmination of everything that happened in your life all at once. Kaboom! That's what happens when you leave this world, because you're transitioning, your threshold transitioning into a whole new world. In fact, on a somewhat smaller scale, but not really, because if your transitions are correct from the gift to the siddha space, it is exactly like a death space. And the degree could actually be even less when you actually die, not more, because if you're doing it right, the gasm part of it, the expression of creative energy that unfolds in a really unbelievably expressive and all-encompassing way, is just, you know, that can happen while you're in your body very, very easily. But so just that is definitely the higher. That's why it's so cool to connect with higher intelligence, higher frequencies of consciousness, because that's their just normal space is like that. That's how they connect, you know. And when they're really connected, that's what I'm intending here in the siddha space. When I say we're all one in our beings right now, we're all literally just beautiful facets of the same diamond, you know, each reflecting this pure essence, you know. There you go. Yeah, the crystal of consciousness, crystals of consciousness. We are crystals of consciousness, by the way. We are two crystals of consciousness. We have two, one for our form and one for our consciousness, and those two eventually have to come in complete harmony. And then we have a third thing, which I don't even know if it's a crystal, but it could be. Who knows? You'll know when those two come together, when the barrier between life and death has been transcended, when you break through that barrier and you have your own, either through actual physical death, or you'll die before you die and have a second birth, which is the best way to do it, because then you get a preview of coming attractions, so to speak. And by that I mean death, after death, before death, which is really, you know, I think everybody should get to. And so the siddha space is training for that. That's just to reveal another layer of what we're doing in the siddha space. And it's also the true question of who am I, you know? And that's a good thing. Before we go any further with the siddha space, I'll just say that the three main questions we have in life: who am I, where am I, and what am I doing here? As I expressed to you earlier in that transmission, Lucy. We'll open up that just a little bit. So who am I? That's the first question. That's actually what is called your Buddha jewel. Okay, we're all Buddhas, we just don't know it. And so your Buddha jewel is your work on self. Your work on self is about your siddha space, because ultimately that's what you want to be and want to embrace and embody is your siddha space, because that's what a Buddha space is. The Sangha space, all of this, and not just this, but extend this into everybody you meet. And the theme we're working with conflict, diplomacy, and peace, is a perfect theme to describe the Sangha space, because in the Sangha space is where you're going to deal with where am I? And because the Sangha space will show you where you're at. Am I in the ghetto? Am I in a high rise? Am I in India? Am I on the moon? Am I on a boat in the middle of the ocean? I'm in the Antarctic. Where am I? That's going to bring up shadows. So that's the where am I, the Sangha space, which is your communion with other beings. That brings up your shadow space. But it also, if you got to the place where you're really, really in equilibrium with your shadows, then it's your power space. And it's just how much power do you have? And that means power for good, because you cannot possibly hold that in that way without it being a goodness and an extension of goodness. I'm not talking about a misuse of power on any level. So forget about that. What it's when I say power, I only mean it in the right use of power, right use of will, for the benefit of all beings everywhere, always. In relieving this suffering, relieving all the suffering with the animals and all. That's what we're doing here. That's what all this vegan synergy meditation is about. Us and the animals and everything. And then the third question, what am I doing here? That's your truth space. What am I doing here? And that's your work for its own sake. That's where your gifts come out. That's where you bring all your gifts out. What am I doing here? I'm sharing my gifts. Sharing my gifts. How do I do that? I embody the siddhas and I embrace the shadows. So I embrace the shadow and turn it into bliss and share my siddha, my bliss. That's a siddha. So that's kind of a neat way to look at it and understand it in terms of another way of looking at these 3 stages we do in this meeting. I mean, it's incredibly rich. There, and as we work and gather more experience, I'll share more facets of how we can work with those 3 treasures. But it depends on the experience we have, because it's because of you guys and the experience you have, I can now start to express deeper concepts about what the 3 lines of the work are, which is work on self, work with others, and work for its own sake, which are the 3 jewels at the same time of the path of awakening, the lineage of awakening, whatever you want to call it, the the collective, what we're doing, accelerated collective evolution. And so when it comes to work on self in your siddha space, that's what accelerated collective evolution is. That's what creates Buddhas, is accelerated collective evolution. Your shadow space, that's all about getting into your heart and learning to do the heart, to transform through your heart, the heart of transformation. That's what we do with our shadows. We bring them into our heart and we love ourselves in that place where we close down as a child, when we are being conditioned under pressurized situations to behave a certain way. And we just felt like our very survival depended on it, because we were dependent on those people for our survival, that were putting the rules on us, and that we close down those spaces. So that's where the heart of transformation comes into play very powerfully. And then for the work's sake, work for its own sake, that is how we follow and live our truth in this world, and share our gifts. That's about centering essence. That's about coming into our center and just coming from our essence, and just being so our nature comes out unhindered. And that's also, again, it's also sharing the siddha of peace in a kind of practical way now, sort of expressing what the application of peace is with human beings. It's the path of awakening. And so I'm describing some of the details of that and why I work the way I do, because it's intimately connected with those 3 lines of the work, those 3 processes, those 3 jewels that come from all the lineages, or all the branches, or all, however you want to call, all the streams of mystics and how they work. They all of them work with that in one way or another. That you can't get away from that, because everything originates from the principle of 3, the Trinity, the triad, however you want to call it.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued by this number of the 3, the triad, that's just keeps coming from so many different angles, and I'm kind of delving into that the vibration of the 3 and what it is, because it's just everywhere, and it's just fascinating with the gene keys, and with I'm seeing it everywhere. In the third aspect of what I'm doing with Paradise Rising is, before we were just looking at activists. Now then we went into looking at supporting activists, and then we went into supporting and giving care for non-humans, for the animals. And now we're opening it up so that there's the third aspect, is people transitioning. So the abusers, which we're not going to call it that, but essentially we have been in the past, I myself as an ex-flesh eater was part of that destruction, was part of that world of use and abuse unconsciously. So I understand, and I do remember what it was like wanting to transition and wanting to have needing that support. And so we're opening it up so that we've got we've got the triangle now. And it's still something that we're working on and developing, but at the same time, I'm very excited about that, and about having, again, it's the middle way, it's the woo way, the effortless action of embodying that peace, I guess, and being the centered and grounded, and having, I guess, because I'm an artist, I see things very visually, and I just keep seeing this triangle and the three elements of everything everywhere. It's really fascinating. And bringing it back to what you were saying as well before, Dharmendra, about I can't remember how you worded it, but the sort of essence of nothingness, or the essence of fullness, that moment of post-death, of sudden full awakening, I guess. That's something that it's not the death aspect, but trying to put this into words, there's an experience that I'm very much looking forward to. I have one of my sisters is an energy healer, and she does some really incredible work with people, and she's developing this process where she can get to the point of shock and pull out the energy of trauma, so that trauma no longer kind of exists in this future of this timeline. And she's been working with that for a little while, and now I'm going to be able to go through that process, and I feel there are certain shocks, certain traumas in my life that I'm excited to experience how that works, and to release trauma that I know has been affecting me very heavily, and I'm able to move past that. And I'm also conscious of not wanting to crave that and not have aversion to my experience now. But at the same time, I just know that there is so much more potential that I can move into. I want to embrace that, my ability to just be so much more effective and really sit in my genius, I guess, by moving past some of those experiences that have been very traumatic, that have been with me since I was like 6 years old. So I see at that point, when I'm sort of visualizing what that is for me, it is a place of peace and letting go of full release of things that I have been holding on to for so long. And knowing that will and is, it's already done on so many levels. I'm sure it's already done, and I'm grateful for it. So having that in my future in this timeline brings me a lot of peace in that feeling and that sensation of release. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucy. That was a good sharing of the Siddha space, even though there's a lot of other things there at one moment. It's always nice when we're in the Siddha space, because I just felt the you could even call it the shock of the life force, and the center just went boom. So that's it. That's hitting the note. It's like each phase has its note. and always the shadow space doesn't really have a note. It's just like we're dragging through the mud long enough. Let's get to the gift space. But the gift space, there's always a certain sense of something in the heart rings true. But then when you do the siddhas, there's always this little kind of mini implosion that happens in the belly when the person hits it for a moment, and because that is the moment, that is that moment. And it's very similar to what happens in the death space. That incredible release of energy inwardly is what happens as we return back to the source. So and something you hit on is about, and it reminded me of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. This is because it's the time of the mother coming in. It's like everybody who pursues and starts to connect in these collective awakening circles around the world, wherever it's happening. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are going to start to come out. I mean, I've been aware of mine for a long time, and everybody has unique and different gifts. I have the gift of being able to shift my consciousness and communicate with beings from all levels of existence. That's just one of them. I have a couple others, but and everybody gets a handful. And if I can speak for Amira, she's one of the most incredible energy workers I've ever experienced. She can get in touch with those the consciousness I get in touch with, so I can do my communication. She does literally the same thing through her hands in delivering energy. I don't even know what to call it, but it just takes on I mean, because you can see it if you're sensitive enough, you can see, and it's really fun to watch her because it's like drawings of psychedelic, moving, live 3D energy work, weavings and things. And it's really fun to watch her do her, and that's what I mean by the gifts of Holy Spirit. Every one of you is going to find that, especially if you keep doing this kind of stuff, because the more you dip into the siddha space, it doesn't ever, you can't ever lose the siddha space energy. It just keeps accumulating. So at a certain point, it's like a ticking time bomb, but in a positive sense. It's just going to start to open up and overflow into whatever every single one of you, your whatever gifts of the Holy Spirit are, and there's 5 main categories of it, but there's a lot of different expressions. So it gets into a lot of different types of gifts of the Holy Spirit. And that's what, when you're describing what your friend is coming onto, that's one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And it sounds very unique to her, and that's really cool, because each one of us will come in with a very unique way of expressing. I feel very blessed that I could be able to, because of what we've been talking about tonight, of being a clear and empty and silent mirror for, the diplomacy thing. Well, after 50 years of doing martial arts, I've become, like most people, what they get from me is peacefulness. And so now this evening, I'm actually beginning to discover why that might be. It's because of this ability to take that diplomacy beyond just the human form, and including the animals too, not just higher forms of consciousness, but all forms of consciousness, and to realize that the ability to be able to communicate at any frequency of consciousness and to hold space and openness for that is so much of what gave me a lot of understanding about what peace is. And a lot of that has been there for many years, but it's beautiful, these meetings, because if you can open up to that siddha space, it can teach you so much, and you can take so many years of stuff you've been working on, and you can get it right in this moment here now with us, like we're doing. And so I feel very grateful for that, and I understand how the peacefulness is connected with the ability to have communication, with multidimensional communication, is the way I want to put it. But I see that the potential in each one of you is there's something emerging slowly in each one of you that is, that you're gonna, and that is my intent in these meetings, is to bring out the Holy Spirit. So I feel it's a good meeting. There's a lot of revelational stuff we can do, and it's because everybody's been showing up for a while, and some people have worked with me from years before and are just rejoining again and kind of just jumping back in where they left off or whatever. But it's nice. It makes the meeting richer. And so when we all come together, and all our facets are part of this one diamond for now, that's hosting a higher intelligence. We all get to be a part of that higher intelligence right now. So and the more you acclimatize yourself to this kind of way of interacting, just the more benefit you can consciously receive and integrate, and then start to share with others for their benefit. Would anybody else like to sit in the space? Okay, I'm going to take that as a time to close the space. Let's see. Lucy's closed the space. Evan's closed the space. Amir's closed the space. Hey, Danya, would you like to close the space this evening? And that just means to synthesize everything into kind of some, brilliant ending statements to kind of say, this is the end of the meeting. Thank you. But not that part, but the part about just, saying something eloquent that sort of summarizes everything we've done this evening. And then I'm going to stop the recording. So I invite you if you'd like.
Thank you, Darby. I appreciate that. I think that everybody needs to take in whatever it is that was offered up tonight. I think that it's very special. I think that a sharing and a uniting of our spirit is not only within our phones, Darby's room, his home, it's beyond, it goes out beyond, and we need to understand that it's limitless. And when we're projecting and when we're feeling positive, to send that out to every being, every plant, every leaf on a plant, every animal as tiny and as large as can be, and just lift up. Just lift up. Thanks, Darby.